Today, we'll be discussing the terrifying backstories to 12 of the world's most haunted bridges, from the Avon Haunted Bridge in Indiana to the Richmond Bridge in Australia. Each of the bridges in this episode has a unique tale guaranteed to send a chill down your spine. So without further ado, grab a snack, dim the lights, and prepare for a feast of grim and grisly content. I'm your host, Severed Soul. As are most things associated with the American Civil War, the haunted Sachs Bridge in Gettysburg is yet another on the long list of haunted structures found in Pennsylvania. Used by both Confederate and Union forces during the Battle of Gettysburg, the Sachs Bridge served as the execution site for at least 3 Southern soldiers, providing the backdrop for the otherworldly activity said to take place there. While many of the haunted locations throughout Gettysburg get plenty of attention, the Sachs Covered Bridge has become an icon and hotspot for otherworldly sightings and paranormal encounters. Its captivating beauty further draws outsiders to experience its mysterious charm. In the daylight, the bridge is truly a picturesque scene with stunning streams of water and elegant wooden construction. Once under the cover of night, however, the atmosphere quickly changes to a rather frightening setting. So often do ghostly activities occur here that it has garnered the attention of many popular paranormal investigators and television series. Many witnesses have come forward to report the sighting of 3 disembodied heads floating on the bridge. Under the dim moonlight, their pictures have captured what appears to be the ghostly apparitions of the 3 Confederate soldiers. Legend has it that the 3 Confederate soldiers were hung from Sachs Covered Bridge during the American Civil War. Many visitors have claimed to see full-bodied apparitions of the soldiers, experienced strange touching and hair-pulling, and heard eerie voices. There are 2 theories as to why the soldiers were hung. The first being that 3 Confederate soldiers deserted their unit and were caught. Their punishment, hanging from the Sachs Covered Bridge. The other theory suggests that the 3 soldiers were actually spies who were caught and subsequently hung from the bridge. The strong scent of cigar smoke has also been detected by guests, as if a soldier or general from years ago still patrols the area. Visitors have also been rattled by a tap on their shoulder, only to find when they turn around that there's absolutely nobody there. The sound of distant gunfire can often be heard when on the bridge at night. You could easily argue that the sound of gunfire be attributed by someone hunting in the nearby woods, if it wasn't for the fact that those same gunshots are often accompanied by cannon fire and screams of anguish. Throughout Gettysburg, tourists and lovers of the paranormal will find many locations to satiate their curiosities, but none are quite as astonishing as the Sachs Covered Bridge in Gettysburg. Its beauty is only matched by its horror. Preserved for nearly 200 years, this haunted crossing stands as a historical reminder of life during the late 19th century and the many brave soldiers who used it during the Battle of Gettysburg. When most people complain about Interstate 4 running just over 132 miles from Tampa to Daytona Beach, they're annoyed with traffic, the wrecks, and the somewhat confusing yet constant construction. But locals in the Sanford area are concerned by something entirely different. This is because of speculation that the area is haunted, and possibly even cursed. Commuters driving through the quarter-mile stretch of highway roughly halfway between Orlando and Daytona Beach leading into the St. Johns River Bridge over Lake Monroe have reported a sudden drop in phone reception, static on their stories and CB radios, and the occasional apparition, zigzagging balls of light, a phantom trucker, and a ghostly hitchhiker. And that specific area is infamous for car crashes and fatalities. In a 2007 report, WKMG Channel 6 reported the Florida Highway Patrol said nearly 440 crashes had been reported there between 1999 and 2006. Is it congestion, as state officials have suggested? Or is there something of a more sinister and supernatural nature at play on this haunted highway? Every day, thousands of unsuspecting drivers pass over a seemingly ordinary stretch of highway, known to locals as the I-4 Dead Zone. This quarter mile of road has earned a notorious reputation as one of the most haunted highways in all of America. The site, once a failed German immigrant colony, serves as the final resting place for settlers who perished during a devastating yellow fever outbreak in 1887. Legend has it that anyone who disturbs this hallowed ground faces dire consequences, including the developers who paved it over to construct the current bridge and road. It's believed that the area where the highway was created was once a grave site that was desecrated during its construction. Let's discuss a bit of backstory surrounding the area. In the 1870s, real estate mogul Henry Sanford promoted the southern shore of Lake Monroe to incoming immigrants and aspiring citrus farmers. He sold 640 acres to a group of German immigrants who established St. Joseph's Catholic colony. Before this, the area was untamed wilderness, home only to Florida's wildlife and a manually operated river ferry. Sanford, head of the Florida Land and Colonization Company, saw potential in the land. By 1886, a small railroad station was constructed, and the land was divided into 10-acre parcels for sale to farmers and investors. Among these settlers was a group of Catholic immigrants led by their priest, Father Felix Swember. A Central Florida historian notes that the colonization efforts quickly fizzled out after only 4 families moved to the area. St. Joseph's Catholic colony never flourished, and in 1887 a yellow fever epidemic sealed the land's fate. The fever claimed 4 members of one family, and in a panic, the remaining colonists buried the bodies in the woods north of the railroad. Father Swember was summoned to perform the last rites, but succumbed to the fever himself shortly after arriving in Tampa. With his death, the exact locations of the grave sites were lost to history. Some believe that because these settlers never received their last rites, their souls could not rest, and they wandered the area, resentful of the living. This might explain the bizarre events associated with this stretch of highway today. As time passed, the story of the colony became local legend. Bad luck was believed to befall anyone who tampered with the grave sites. One farmer's house mysteriously burned down after he removed grave markers, and a drunk driver tragically struck a child after playing around the site. These inexplicable events earned the area the grim nickname Field of the Dead. When Florida began purchasing land to build a new highway, the field, including the grave sites, was sold to the state. Although the graves were supposed to be relocated, they were neglected and ultimately paved over, ignoring their sanctity. Soon after, a hurricane struck the area. In true Florida fashion, Hurricane Donna hit on September 10, 1960, devastating the region. The storm's path was eerily precise, seemingly targeting the gravesite along the I-4. Hurricane Donna's flooding disrupted highway construction for months, and was one of the worst storms to hit Central Florida in centuries. Adding to the mystery, the hurricane altered its course to follow I-4 through Central Florida, with the eye passing over the gravesite around midnight. Many locals believe the highway construction and the disturbance of the dead influenced Donna's path. In 2004, another hurricane, Charlie, followed Donna's route, passing over the gravesite just as construction resumed around the area. This marked the beginning of the eerie legacy of the I-4 Dead Zone. The I-4 highway stretches 132 miles through Florida, with the Dead Zone located between Daytona Beach and Orlando, near St. Johns River. Drivers and visitors to the I-4 dead zone report strange phenomena when passing through this specific stretch. Cell phones mysteriously pick up voices near the south end of the I-4 bridge in Seminole County. One witness claimed conversations would be interrupted by voices of the dead. The area is infamous for an unusually high number of fatal accidents. On the very day the interstate opened to traffic, a truck hauling frozen shrimp became the dead zone's first casualty, losing control and jackknifing directly above the gravesite. Frequent deadly accidents are believed to be caused by the restless spirits buried beneath the highway's cold concrete. Other unexplained occurrences include static on CB radios, cell phones turning off without warning, mysterious balls of light floating above the road, ghostly hitchhikers, phantom voices, and apparitions. What causes these strange events? Could it be the power of suggestion? Or is something more sinister at play? Locals are convinced that these occurrences stem from the secrets buried just beneath the asphalt. Whether you believe in the supernatural or not, the story of the I-4 dead zone serves as a chilling reminder of the past, where history and legend converge in the most unexpected places. The bridge that dates back to the 12th century is said to have made the devil very angry. The Pont du Diable is a Roman bridge in Toulon-sur-Arroux, France. Legends surround the history of this 13-arch structure that crosses the river Arroux. The first local legend concerns the Lord of Toulon. He had a castle at the east bank of the river, but his wife preferred to ride her horse on the other side of the Arroux. To cross the river with her horse without getting her clothes wet, she had to lift her skirts, exposing that she had a club foot. The Lord's wife was very vain, and it embarrassed her very much that everybody could see her foot. The Lord ordered that a bridge be built, and she was able to cross the Arroux without lifting her skirts. Others say that the Duke of Burgundy built the bridge for his daughter, but for the same reason. Another local story says that while the bridge was being constructed, the mason was struggling to finish on time. Fearing the consequences of a missed deadline, the mason made a pact with the devil. The pact was as follows. If the mason could not finish the bridge, the devil would have it done before the rooster crowed the following morning. In return, the mason promised the devil his daughter's soul. The mason worked all night and wound up finishing the bridge in time. When the devil saw this, he was upset. To get the soul of the mason's daughter, he stole a brick from the bridge and hid it. But the devil did not count on the betrothed of the mason's daughter, who loved the girl dearly. Expecting foul play, the young man watched the bridge all night and saw the devil's unfair act. After the devil was gone, he took the hidden brick and put it back in its place on the bridge right before the rooster crowed, saving the soul of his beloved. Supposedly, a brick bearing the traces of the claws of the devil can still be found in the bridge, and this brick never gets dirty or mossy. When the devil realized that he had been outwitted, he got so upset that he spent many days throwing big rocks around in the area surrounding Toulon-sur-Arroux. If you're enjoying this episode so far, please do me a massive favour by clicking on the like button and subscribing to the channel. Now, on to the next story. Travellers to the old Alton Bridge, built in 1884 as a busy thoroughfare, have long reported frightening encounters and ghostly experiences with supernatural creatures that have made it a legendary spot for Texas ghost hunters and a topic for numerous books. According to the most circulated version, an African-American entrepreneur named Oscar Washburn and his family tended a farmstead goat herd near the bridge that was renowned for quality meat, milk, cheeses, and hides. When the popular businessman proudly hung a sign on the old Alton Bridge directing "This way to the Goatman," it infuriated local Ku Klux Klansmen who plotted violence. On a dark night in the late 1930s, a lynch mob of Kluxers stormed Washburn's shack and dragged the screaming Goatman to their noose waiting on the bridge, tightened the rope around the begging Oscar's neck, then mercilessly flung him over the side. When the night riders stumbled down to the dark river's edge to confirm their murderous handiwork, they were shocked to find only an inexplicably empty noose dangling over the undisturbed waters. The panicked Klansmen frantically searched the area unsuccessfully before rushing to Washburn's shanty, setting it afire with the Goatman's family shrieking inside, perhaps to bait a desperate rescue attempt by the vanished Oscar. Washburn was never seen again, they say, but a vengeful spirit has haunted the old Alton Bridge ever since. Local legend says if you knock on the steel bridge 3 times at night, or perhaps turn off your car lights and honk 3 times in summons, then you dare a visitation from the vengeful Goatman that's preceded by the stench of decaying flesh. Numerous reports tell of unholy glowing eyes that burn red from the darkness, eerie glimpses of a large snarling, goat-headed man-beast stomping in the wooded shadows, or a frightening apparition of a maniacal satyr carrying the heads of goats or humans in his hands. The terrifying encounters and reported vanishings have been so frequent as to warrant numerous investigations by paranormal groups. But, like I said, there's more than one version that attempts an explanation for a century of recurring frights and sights encountered at the bridge. Some attribute the work of Satanists who opened a portal for a hell-spawn demon, while others say that the Goatman's wife is eternally searching for her murdered children. There is also another variation that predates the bridge itself. In an account that may go back as far as the 1860s, Texas Troubles, some Copper Canyon cowboys lynched a Creole slave goat herder named Jack Kendall from a tall creekside tree near where the bridge now stands. But ineptitude separated the runaway slave's head from his body. The slavers then watched in horror as the headless body raised itself from the creekbed mud, animated by voodoo, and ripped off the head of a nearby goat to replace his own, still dangling in the noose. Regardless of which origin gets told, old-timers warn that knocking 3 times on the trusses of the bridge is an invitation to judgment, since the ghastly Goatman only spirits away those with the bloodlines of Klansmen or slave owners into the woods for his terrible revenge. On the outskirts of Meridian, in rural Lauderdale County, an old truss bridge spans the Chunky River, a tributary of the Chickasahee River. Designated a Mississippi landmark and listed on the National Register of Historic Places, the bridge has long been closed to vehicles. Yet many a visitor still ventures out onto Stuckey's Bridge in search of the ghost of Old Man Stuckey. Legend has it that the infamous train-robbing Dalton gang passed through Meridian in the late 1800s, leaving behind a member of their group. Stuckey made his way down the old dirt stage road along the Chunky River and established an inn beside its banks. At dusk, he would cross the bridge with his lantern and call out to exhausted travellers floating on the river to stop for the night for a hot meal and comfortable bed. Once the guests had drifted off to sleep, however, Stuckey would murder them in their beds, stealing their belongings and burying their bodies at the river's edge. Stuckey killed more than 20 victims before he was caught by the local sheriff, tried and hung from the bridge. His body swung for 5 days over the Chunky River before the noose was cut and he was dropped into the water. The original bridge from Stuckey's days was replaced in 1901 by the current truss bridge. but the replacement apparently didn't deter Stucky from hanging around. Visitors have reported peculiar sights at the bridge, from an old man carrying a lantern at the water's edge to the sound of Stucky's lifeless corpse splashing into the water flowing below. Some have seen Stucky's body swaying in the wind. Some even claim to have seen Stucky's body swaying in the wind, and others claim that Stucky's angry ghost pushed them off the bridge. So, if you dare, next time you're near Meridian, take a short detour off the I-59 and visit Stucky's Bridge, which the Travel Channel labels as one of the most terrifying places in America. The story of the Bunnyman of Fairfax County in Northern Virginia is one that has been haunting locals for many years. There is a few different variations and tales, but I'll try to bring you what I've read that seems to be the most common of these tales. Sometime around 1904, a bus transporting prisoners from an asylum crashed, and all of the inmates escaped. Every last one. The police were able to capture all but two of them. They were named Marcus Wolster and Douglas Grifton. During the hunt for the two men, the police found the half-eaten bodies of nearly a dozen rabbits. Eventually, they found Marcus Wolster's body at a railway bridge. This bridge later became known as the Bunnyman Bridge. Wolster's body was cold and stiff, but the police noticed he was holding something in his hand with a tight grip. It was a hatchet. Another version of the story claims that Wolster's body was found hacked up by a hatchet, most likely wielded by fellow escapee Douglas Grifton, who went on to live in the nearby woods as the Bunnyman. About a year or so later, a couple of teens were driving with their girlfriends looking to scare them. They decided to go out to the old railroad bridge where the Bunnyman was killed. It was almost midnight. The boys stopped under the bridge and dragged the scare girls out of the car, teasing them that the ghost of the Bunnyman would get them. The teasing became too much for one of the girls, who pushed the boys away and ran out from under the bridge into the road. At that moment, at the exact stroke of midnight, she saw a bright flash of light under the bridge. When the light faded, she saw her friends' bodies mutilated and hanging from the bridge, and their car had a bloody axe stuck into the windshield. Ever since that night, local kids gather every Halloween at Bunnyman Bridge, but they all scatter before midnight, as none want to be caught under the bridge when the Bunnyman comes. In 2018, a man's body was found near the bridge. A police officer stated, "He was found along the 6500 block of Colchester Road in Fairfax Station by a nearby resident just before 7 a.m. Hooker's body was about 900 feet from what's known as the Bunnyman Bridge. The railroad bridge is part of an urban legend, which draws hordes of teenagers to the rural area of Fairfax County every Halloween. And certainly it's ironic the man's body popped up near the Bunnyman Bridge." One Redditor even said that as far as he knows, the police still block off access to the Bunnyman Bridge on Halloween. Years later, in 1970, a young couple parked outside a family member's house one night very close to the Bunnyman Bridge. They claimed to see something moving in the rearview mirror. Before they could get out of the car, there was a loud smash as a wooden-handled hatchet came flying through the glass, and a man standing outside the car started shouting at them that they were on private property. Luckily, neither the man or woman were hurt, and they floored it out of there and went straight to the police. Upon investigation, a hatchet was later found in the car. The couple said the man looked to be wearing a white outfit with what looked like a hood or bunny ears. Just a few weeks later, right before Halloween, only a few blocks away, a construction security guard was out on patrol. He came upon a man wearing what he described as a grey or white bunny suit on a front porch. The man in the bunny suit told the security guard he was trespassing and that if he came any closer, he'd hack off the security guard's head. He then pulled out a hatchet and began chopping away at the wooden post on the porch. The security guard ran to get a weapon, but the man was gone when he got back. Sometime after this sighting, the construction company working in the area got a call from someone claiming to be the Bunnyman. He said that if they did not stop leaving trash and materials on his land, he was going to visit them personally and hack them up. The police were called, but the man or entity was never found. This story came from another Redditor. I lived in Fairfax as a kid in the 90s. One fall afternoon, I was walking home from school when I passed someone walking down the street in a Bunnyman suit. I would like to say the story ended there, but it didn't. I kept noticing out of the corner of my eyes that they were behind me. When I would turn around, they were just standing there perfectly still, staring straight at me. I eventually realised they were following me, so I ran the rest of the way home and locked the apartment door. I never saw the person again, thank God. I don't know if it was a person in a suit just trying to copy the popular legend, or if it was the ghost of the Bunnyman that people talk about. Either way, I was scared shitless. To this day, people in Fairfax all over the area still talk about the Bunnyman. Some believe it's just a legend, others a cryptid. Some believe the Bunnyman to be the malevolent ghost of Marcus Walster. Out in the Hertfordshire countryside is a sunken Roman road, now sided by old trees with tentacle-like roots that top the high brick and flint walls as if they are climbing out of the road. Along the old hollowway is a hidden bridge known by locals as the Devil's Bridge on Spooky Lane. It's shrouded in urban legends of ghosts and witchcraft curses. One of the ghosts sighted along the old road was a silent, robed monk walking towards a monastery that used to be nearby. Another was a Roman soldier standing to attention guarding the road. Others have reported strange sounds and mysterious red lights coming from the surrounding bushes. Local legend will tell you that this is a place where witchcraft was once practiced. Until not too long ago, the walls did have pentagrams and 666s chalked on them. Whether this is the work of the occult or pranksters is not quite clear. The bridge is unusually situated, almost on top of a steep hill. It is made of brick and seems over-elaborate in its construction. Its ribbed underarch has led some to suspect it was made with a forgotten purpose. Others speculate the bridge was made to settle a land access dispute, explaining its strange uphill location. Cars suffering mechanical breakdowns near the bridge, then returning to working order again moments later, have been reported, as well as horses and dogs acting strangely spooked. Built around the time of the 3rd Duke of Bridgewater, the road was a carriage drive to the nearby stately home Ashridge House along the Golden Valley. It's said the Duke had the old Roman road sunken to hide the lady of the house from the stare of the local peasant workers and other non-noblemen. The nearby village is beautiful, with some medieval-era houses and a church dating back to 1275. Whatever the truth is about this place, it is a fascinating local urban legend. What's the basis of folklore? Is it merely the musings of a bored and creative mind? Or are there ripples of truth tucked away in otherwise fantastical tales, allowing the story to both exist in our reality and that which sits beyond the veil? It's a question to ponder as you approach the ominous bridge crossing over the gentle waters of the Medina River. Donkey Lady Bridge may be a conduit for spectral energy, the river serving as the perfect manifestation point for an unsettling legend that exists just outside San Antonio's suburbs. The horrific Donkey Lady of San Antonio claims this stretch of road, or so the urban legend goes. In the shadows of foliage and brush, the disfigured entity lies in wait for hapless drivers, possibly in search of revenge for the horrific acts that were set upon herself and her family. Passers-by and curious locals have tested the merits of the Donkey Lady Bridge legend, some having walked away spouting only warnings for others with the same inclination to cause mischief at the feral spirit's bridge. The Donkey Lady story has several iterations, though they all have the same tragic ending. A melted figure rushes from a burning home, jumps into the cooling river waters, and vanishes forever. Where and when this gruesome tale occurs varies, though the consensus is sometime during the 1800s or the 1950s. The details leading up to the perilous death of the so-called Donkey Lady are also up for debate, though they all unravel in the same location. Anyone brave enough to park their car on the bridge, turn off the lights, and wait in silence may just come face to face with the grisly phantom. The two most popular versions of the lore of the Donkey Lady always starts with a farmer, a wife, and their two children. In one version, the father snaps and turns on his family in a moment reminiscent of the Amityville horror. He kills the children outright, possibly refusing to subject them to the same brutal end their mother was about to meet. Rather than spare his wife though, the farmer sets his home ablaze, trapping his beloved inside. Wails echo from the rising inferno as the heat takes its toll on the woman's body. Her skin begins to melt the longer she stays in the farmhouse, the flesh of her fingers fusing together like candle wax. Her skin chars and recedes around her skeleton, giving her face an elongated look. Before death can take her, the woman breaks free from the inferno and rushes to the nearby Medina River. Her body was never found. It's believed the Donkey Lady is the charred woman returning, hoping to find her husband and exact her revenge. Another popular version sees the same family in their farmhouse, but it's not the father who kills his family and sets the creation of the Donkey Lady in motion. While the family is minding their business on the outskirts of civilization, a stranger comes to their farm and becomes sidetracked by their animals. Believed to come from money, the stranger torments one of the farmer's animals, either a horse or a mule. Bothered by the man's presence and actions, the animal bites him, inciting rage from the stranger. As he beats the poor beast, the farmer and his family rush out to protect the livestock. Though they chase the villain away with stones, it's not long before he returns. The affluent man returns in the cover of night. He is joined by a posse of vandals who intend to help settle the score. With the family asleep inside, the party sets the farmhouse on fire. In this version, the farmer tries to distract the men, hoping to give his family a chance to escape. He's gunned down instantly, and his children succumb to the blaze. His wife is doomed to become the horrifying fiend that would, years later, spur tales of a Donkey Lady haunting the bridge on Old Applewhite Road. There's a third version that sees the wife and her domesticated donkey drowned in the river together, their souls merging into one malformation that terrorizes anyone who comes close to their final resting place. Though a nightmarish sight, the Donkey Lady doesn't appear to be dangerous. At least, nobody has gotten close enough to warrant being attacked by the spectre. Rambunctious teens and brave ghost hunters have tested the limits of the Donkey Lady. None ever walk away with a marking to suggest that the protector of the bridge is even capable of physical interaction with the living. The powerful energy generated by her painful death and loss of her family allows her to remain a supernatural fixture of San Antonio. There are many haunts that stalk the centuries-old city, from residuals simply retelling their story to intelligent haunts protecting a piece of their past. On the side of Bowcatcher Mountain, An arched stone bridge stands vine-covered and shrouded in trees. Helens Bridge is like a sentinel overlooking downtown Nashville, spanning past and present just as much as the road below. While many are drawn to the majestic beauty of Helens Bridge, others want to see the ghost of the woman legend says haunts it. The bridge was built in 1909 as a carriageway for the Zeelandia estate, and was originally known as Zeelandia's Bridge. That much is known. Some years later, the rugged structure became known as Helens Bridge, named after the ghost that legend says haunts it. There are several versions of the story of how Helen's spirit came to be at the bridge, but the most consistent one is that Helen's daughter tragically died in a fire almost 100 years ago. Grief-stricken, Helen tied a noose around her neck and flung herself from the bridge. According to most reports, Helen's ghost is not threatening. She just seems as tortured now as she was after the death of her daughter. Some claim to see Helen's lifeless body hanging from the bridge. Others see her beside the bridge, frantically searching for her daughter. Others have said they have seen her standing in the road, looking forlorn and lost. Numerous mechanical problems have also been attributed to Helen's ghost. Many people have said their vehicles would not start when they tried to leave. Others have reported problems with camera and cell phone batteries. Why not pay a trip to Helens Bridge if you're ever in the area? You might just witness the apparition of her hanging body for yourself. The Headless Horseman of Lakey's Creek is quite possibly one of the oldest ghost stories in Illinois. Passed down as an oral tradition until John W. Allen put the story on paper in 1963, the mysterious man named Lakey, as well as his untimely end, has been immortalized in the folklore of southern Illinois. Like Lake Michigan's Seaweed Charlie, this ghost story may be preserving the memory of an unsettling event in local history. Long before a concrete bridge spanned the shallow creek 1.5 miles east of McLeansboro, a frontiersman named Lakey attempted to erect his log cabin near a ford along the wagon trail to Mount Vernon. One morning, a lone traveller stumbled upon Lakey's body. Lakey's head had been severed by his own axe, which was left at the scene. According to legend, his murderer was never found. For decades after the murder, travellers reported being chased by a headless horseman who rode out of the woods along Lakey's Creek. Always the rider, on a large black horse, joined travellers approaching the stream from the east, and always on the downstream side, John Allen wrote. Each time, and just before reaching the centre of the creek, the mist-like figure would turn downstream and disappear. In the October 1973 issue of Goshen Trails, Ralph S. Harrelson published research in which he claimed to have learned the historical personage behind the Lakey legend. In a history of Hamilton County, he discovered a single sentence revealing that a man named Lakey, the same man who gave his name to the creek, had indeed lived near the ford, but more tellingly, that he had been murdered by his son-in-law. After further research, Harrelson discovered that a man named Joel Leakey had owned a tract of land in that vicinity prior to 1824. Leakey apparently was a variation in the spelling of Lakey. Joel could be, and probably is, the person for who the creek is named, he concluded. The tale of the Headless Horseman of southern Illinois has graced the pages of many monographs on Illinois ghost lore since its first printing in 1963. Among others, Lakey's ghost has appeared in Beth Scott and Michael Norman's Haunted Heartland in 1985, Joe Ann Christensen's Ghost Stories of Illinois in 2000, and Chad Lewis and Terry Fisk's Illinois Road Guide to Haunted Locations in 2007. Only Chad Lewis and Terry Fisk's work contains a contemporary encounter with the Phantom. A local woman who was familiar with the Lakey legend told them about the incident. The woman passed over the bridge every day on her way to and from work. One evening, she saw something strange in the woods. As the woman slowed down to get a better look at what she had seen, she almost crashed her car because of what was staring back at her, Lewis and Fisk related. Perched on top of a large horse was a man with no head. We will never know if Washington Irving's famous tale of the legend of Sleepy Hollow affected the legend of Lakey's Creek. It is possible that German settlers carried the tale from New England to southern Illinois. Stories involving ghostly chases, such as Gottfried Berger's The Wild Huntsman, were widely popular in the early 1800s. Then again, Lakey's Black Steed could have been sighted right here in Illinois. Avon's Haunted Bridge. Maybe you hear the moans of a construction worker trapped forever inside the arches of Avon's Haunted Bridge after he slipped and fell into wet concrete. Or perhaps it's the ghostly cries of a woman mourning the sick baby who tumbled from her arms down into the water of White Lick Creek. The stories are nearly as old as the 115-year-old Gothic bridge that towers over County Road 625 East, just south of US 36. The bridge and its folklore are intertwined with the lives of people who live in this part of Hendricks County. Harriet Muston heard them all from her husband, Charlie, whose ancestors settled in the area during the 1830s. She said Charlie's aunt, Ruth Barker, fed the workers as they constructed the bridge. There's a big white house, and that's where they lived, and I can remember my mother-in-law saying that her parents would be so mad because the kids would all get out and play on the railroad tracks, Muston said. And the mother, of course, didn't like it. The bridge, with its uniquely haunting appearance, has been a magnet for residents, particularly teenagers, for generations. The road was all gravel, and there weren't all the nearby housing additions back then, so it was far spookier than it is now, said Joseph Neal, who grew up in Plainfield during the 1980s and 90s. Those arches along the bridge almost looked like eyes. Construction on the bridge took place in 1906 and 1907 for the Big Four Railroad, the more common name for the Cleveland, Cincinnati, Chicago and St. Louis Railway. The Indianapolis News on June 27, 1907, reported the 305-foot long bridge has 3 arches of 75 feet each, and on top of these are 24 arches of 7 feet and 4 inches. The approximate cost was $70,000. Trains crossing through Hendricks County today carry freight and industrial materials along lines owned by CSX, but they originally took passengers to and from Union Station in Indianapolis. The bridge was double-tracked in 1908, the same year the Friday Caller, a newspaper in Plainfield, published a story on some of the earliest reports of spirits in the area. 2 or 3 men have been killed in accidents at the Big Four Bridge over Big Creek, and now the bridge is alleged to be haunted. Reputable men say that sounds of a great wave falling into the water underneath is sometimes heard, but the water remains perfectly calm, with no sign of having been disturbed. J.W. Bunk Atherton, a well-known citizen, passed the bridge just after dark on election night, and he declares he saw some spirits hovering around the east end of the structure. Like all good folklore, there are multiple stories to explain the strange happenings. Susan Truax, a historian for the Avon Washington Township Public Library, said one involves a worker who fell into wet concrete and remained there when the foreman did not want to stop work. Some say a saw was left in the drying concrete and his screams can still be heard some nights. Another version of perhaps the same story involves a worker who was sawing a wooden beam that was too long. He was on a wooden framework above the centre support. The worker lost his balance and fell directly into the freshly poured concrete. The other workers could not save him, and signs of his fate include the end of his saw still protruding from the centre support, and the screaming that can be heard whenever a train passes over the bridge. A third story involves a woman hurrying over the bridge on the railroad track with her sick baby. She caught her foot on the track and dropped the baby, who subsequently died. Truax said another version of that story says the mother fell to her death in the creek as well. Whether or not the bridge is really haunted by the poor souls of those who died here remains a topic of speculation among locals. But what do you think? Leave your thoughts in the comments section. It's beautiful, it's haunted, and its claim to fame is that it's the oldest existing stone arch bridge in Australia. Bridges are commonplace, so what makes the Richmond Bridge in Tasmania such a unique destination? It has the distinction of being Australia's oldest existing stone arch bridge. Biggs Bridge was named after Royal Commissioner John Thomas Bigg, who suggested the bridge's construction in 1820. It was constructed by incarcerated labourers, men imprisoned in the nearby Richmond Gaol, which was a regular practice at the time for big construction and road projects. These incarcerated workers were forced to mine sandstone from nearby Butcher's Hill and deliver it to the site using carts. The start of bridge construction cemented Richmond as an important town in the settlement of Van Diemen's Land, not just as a farming area. The village was bustling as private dwellings and 2 inns were built. In January 1825, the Richmond Bridge was built and opened. The whole length was 41 metres, or 135 feet, while the breadth was 7.5 metres, or 25 feet. It possessed the largest span of any bridge in Australia at the time, and it retained that record until 1836. Brown Triassic sandstone was used to build it. The construction was superb, and the bridge has lasted nearly 200 years with relatively minor maintenance. It was built to accommodate wheat carts, but it's still in service today, carrying significantly heavier vehicles. The ghost of George Grover is one of the many mysteries surrounding the bridge. George was brought to Tasmania as a convict, and was later made a flagellator and put in charge of a group of convicts who were repairing the bridge's piers. George was an unlikable figure, even for a flagellator. He was believed to ride on the sandstone carts that convicts dragged from the Butcher's Hill, flogging them as if they were horses. There have been many reported sightings of George Grover's ghost peering out from the western side of the Richmond Bridge. The ghost of George Grover's dog is reported to wander beside individuals who cross the bridge at night. Well, that's all for today. I really hope you enjoyed that episode. If you did, then please do me a huge favour by clicking on the like button and subscribing to the channel for a feast of grim and grisly content. Please also leave any thoughts on today's stories in the comments section. I always try my very best to respond to any comments. As always, thanks for watching. I'm your host, Severed Soul.